Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and it's once again time for the asking of the Herbert Erpaderp. First, apologies for this being a bit late. A much beloved family pet, Manowar the dog, was euthanized on Wednesday when I would normally record this, so obviously I wanted to say goodbye because she was a very good doggo. She was also quite an old dog, almost 14 years. She'd been blind for a while and her health was rapidly declining, so it was probably the best thing for her. But still, I'm going to miss that derpy little critter. I would have preferred to see 100 people die. Rip Manowar, you will definitely be missed. Let's get to the questions, shall we? Duncanuva said, what video editing software do you use? I use Premiere Pro. It is a bit pricey and you can only get it as a subscription, but I really like it. In addition to Premiere, I use Audition for audio work and Photoshop for images. I also use After Effects and the light version of Cinema 4D that's included with After Effects. I did my little sprue intro thing with that. All of those are part of the Creative Cloud suite, which is why it's not especially cheap. But you can get each piece of software individually a little bit cheaper. Probably still not cheap enough unless you're serious about editing though. Dust Doodlebug said, have you heard of or played Postscriptum? I've been aware of Postscriptum for a while. I think it just released or will be released soon. I haven't really been following it that closely, though I was kind of tempted to get the early access version of it a few weeks ago. But before buying, I figured it would be a good idea to watch some people streaming it, and it seems like it would be a bit too serious business for me. I didn't really see much about how the tanks play, and I think that would be the most interesting part for me. But it seems like you need an entire tank crew to even function. And I'm not sure I would be able to, or really want to, convince my friends to buy a $30 game so that I can derp around in a tank until I'm bored with it. It's obviously marketed as a realistic simulatory type of game, and while it's nice to see that they care about historical accuracy and such, it doesn't really appeal to me as a game so much. I'm sure that's a lot of people's cup of tea, but realistic simulator games don't really do much for me because they just kind of seem like work. The game's description even says, a difficult learning curve and an intense need for cohesion, communication, and teamwork, which doesn't really sound like fun to me. I play games to have fun, my version of fun, and I don't really want to spend my free time having to be all serious business with all the communication and tactics or whatever. Also, in my experience, games like that tend to have boring, salty, no fun allowed communities full of elitists who look down on you for playing games for fun. I mean, I had a quick look at their subreddit and there's posts on there whining about radio chatter and such. I might buy it, but only if it's heavily discounted. But by that time, probably the only people playing it will be the super dedicated serious business guys, and it'll be kind of like Verdun, where I repeatedly die and get bored before I can figure out how to play it properly. Actually, that's probably what it would be like if I bought it now. I'd just feel worse having spent $30 on it. John Hell said, when you gonna paint the 1/35th scale Tamiya Tiger 2? I don't know. Eventually. I lost some of the video of myself painting it, so the video isn't going to be what I wanted it to be, and that's caused me to lose a bit of interest in even painting it. I'm not going to strip it back to recapture the lost video, but it will eventually get done. Also, because you posted the same question a couple of times, I feel like I should mention that you only need to post questions once. Posting multiple times isn't going to get it answered any faster, and depending on my mood, it might cause the question just to be ignored. Just in case people start feeling like they need to spam their questions for whatever reason. The squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease. Max Strike Eagle, which is a pretty cool name, though kind of hard to say with the X and S sounds next to each other, said, have you ever used Vallejo's airbrush cleaner? I'm looking into getting some and was wondering if you have ever had any experience with it. I haven't used it before and I don't really know much about it. I have been interested in trying it before but just never gotten around to it. Maybe I should. I would be interested to hear what you think of it if you end up trying it yourself. Ratto said, how derp is the BT-42? Derp enough? It is very derpy, and I think derpy enough. It also, presumably, combines that derp with speed and the ability to do sick jumps. It's a very interesting looking vehicle, and I think I would like to build one sometime. Top Bunk Productions said, do you think Gale Force 9's tanks would be a nice alternative option for wargaming with Barnaby? Building and painting 3 or so 15mm tanks per side would take a lot less effort than preparing a bolt-action army. I guess it might be a nice alternative, but it does seem a little bit wasteful if the bolt-action army is already halfway done. I'm a why not both kind of guy, and I do already have plenty of models that would work with tanks. I'm pretty sure Barnaby has a handful of 15mm stuff too. The thing is, Barnaby doesn't have a lot of time left over after his job and kids have been dealt with, and I'm not going to even try to dictate what he does with the free time he does have for the sake of a video. That's not a good way to treat a friend. He'll get his models built when he gets them built. Building the models is also kind of a small part of it. When you're time poor, it's kind of hard to find a good solid block of time for tabletop games. Also, we live about an hour apart, so there's also travel time involved. At any rate, there's no rush, we'll play a game soon enough. I am quite keen to get a video of that done, but there's no real impetus to stress about it and try to force it to happen sooner. Top Bunk also said, I'm setting up a Discord server for my newly founded World of Tanks Blitz clan, the server not being too dissimilar to your own. What tutorials did you follow to create your server? I am rather clueless as how to do things like set up a welcome channel. I don't remember any specific tutorials that I used, I just kind of googled it each time I had something that I couldn't work out myself, so the information I got was from all over the place really. Discord itself does have some fairly handy articles, so I guess just Google it. It's pretty simple to manage once you've got the basics down. I think one of the main reasons Discord is so popular nowadays is because it's pretty simple to set up and maintain. The Chieftain said, I know you like odd vehicles. What do you think of the Soviet ZIS-30 SPG? Is it meant to be pronounced Zis or ZIS? I like Zis better, it sounds funnier. I think it's an adorable and comical little thing. It's a Komsomolets tractor with the couches on top removed and replaced with a gun that looks way too big for it. I also vaguely remember enjoying playing it in War Thunder, mostly because it was so silly looking. I would really like to have one in plastic for my Soviet bolt-action army. Slav said, how cool are you? Oh, I'm super cool. I can hear the people who know me groaning and rolling their eyes now. Fortunately, they probably aren't watching, so they can't argue when I say they're wrong. I'm super cool. I would totally walk away from an explosion without even looking once. The Big Boy said, what is a good way to strip acrylic paint from models in your experience? Had a disaster with a Panzer IV and now a lot of detail is drowned in paint. That doesn't sound pleasant at all. I have pretty much no experience in stripping models. I've never really felt an urge to strip a model back or made a big enough mistake that couldn't also be easily fixed, and I'm not really interested in repainting older models, so I've never really needed to work out what works best for stripping paint. I'm sure I saw some discussion in the modelling channel anyway, and I hope you got some good answers there. I have heard that stuff like Dettol or something called Simple Green, if you can get it, will work well, but I wouldn't know from experience. John Hell said, will you build something Finnish, Herb? I might. I don't have any specific plans to do so though, but a Finnish Stug 3 with the additional concrete armour and some logs might be fun to do someday. Salika said, do you ever question how your baby mice video has over 1 million views? Not really, though I am kind of surprised that it does. In a good way, of course. I would love it if more of my videos had those kind of numbers, obviously. Though a byproduct of that video having so many views is that it also gets a lot of comments. Some of them are really shitty too. I do take a small amount of pleasure in reporting the worst of them for abuse, with the thought that they wasted their time thinking they're all edgy, but nobody will ever see it. Sucks to be them. Duncanuva said, I don't know if someone asked or not, have you had a look at Conflict 47 that Warlord does? This has been asked a few times, and I have had a look at it. I haven't bought anything for the game yet, but I do find it interesting. And I like that with a few simple additions like different turrets on tanks, a regular bolt-action army can be used as a Conflict 47 army. I will probably buy some Conflict 47 models next time I make an order from Warlord. Pax Britannica said, what's your favourite and least favourite Star Trek series, and why? I would say Deep Space Nine is certainly my favourite, probably because that's the first one that I really watched as a full series. Also, it has so many excellent recurring characters and nice long story arcs. I also really like The Next Generation, though it's more of a single story per episode kind of show. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I guess my least favourite is Enterprise, though it did start getting quite good later in its run and I feel like it was cancelled too early. I still haven't seen any of Star Trek Discovery, so I have no idea if that might be my least favourite or not, but I did hear that Patrick Stewart was coming back as Captain Picard, and that's really exciting. The Big Boy said, would you consider taking a look at Bandai kits? It seems none of their subjects appeal that much to you, but it's really worth taking a look at them for their quality. Perhaps one of the cheaper Star Wars kits or Space Battleship Yamato. I have actually seen them in the local hobby shops before and considered getting one or two a few times. I always decided against it for something I found a bit more exciting though, which obviously makes sense. Maybe I should get one of their Star Wars kits though. I do like me some Star Wars. Not as much as Star Trek, but still. Flying Scannion said, "What is your general opinion about anime? Have you watched any?" The only anime I've enjoyed is Girls und Panzer. My general opinion is indifference, really. I don't really like the art styles and the stories don't seem that interesting to me. I'm sure there's some good stuff out there, but I don't really have the interest in seeking it out. But anime doesn't force me to watch it, and I'm sure it brings a lot of entertainment to other people, so in that regard, I think it's fine. Personally, I think the worst thing about anime is the weebs, with their anime waifus and body pillows and such, but then obsessive fans of anything are pretty annoying, really. Sneaky Zaku said, "What are your thoughts on kittens?" Kittens are adorable and I would like to have one. Unfortunately, kittens and models don't tend to mix. I think it would also try to eat my fish and mice, so I probably shouldn't get one, but I'll always have time to stop and pat a kitty. Gentleman said, "Have you ever considered getting a 3D printer?" I do think about it every now and then. Obviously they're getting better and more reasonable to buy, but I'm not sure they're quite there, not in my price range anyway. I mean, I would want to print things that don't then need a bunch of work afterwards to clean up. Also, I don't really feel inclined to tinker around with 3D models or the printer itself to get it to work properly. I also don't really have space to set something like that up. I'll probably get one day, it's almost inevitable, and eventually they'll probably be really good, but at the moment I'm not sure I would use it enough to justify the cost. Australian Train Nut said, "Will you get the Tamiya 1/35th scale King George V?" I don't have any plans to at the moment. A 3/50th scale ship seems like it would be pretty big, and a quick googling suggests that it would cost well over $100, which would make sense. Big kits do tend to be a little bit more expensive. Too expensive for me, really. I already have too many unbuilt kits that I need to work my way through first. Also, because it's in the comment, I feel like this is as good a time as any to remind people that the Ask a Herbert Erpaderp channel in Discord isn't a general chat room, and it's been getting a little bit cluttered of late. So I would appreciate it if you guys didn't answer the questions in there, and if you do have other comments, by all means feel free to post them in the other channels, like General Herb Derpery. You could tag the relevant person in there if you really wanted to respond to their question. I don't really want to have to do the extra work of sorting out what is and isn't a question. The Ask a Herbert Erpaderp channel in Discord was designed to make things easier. Please don't make it harder. I don't want to have to start handing out bans. Max Strike Eagle said, "What are your thoughts on this image? Did you know that this is what a boiler explosion would cause?" And as you can probably see, there's a picture of a steam engine with a mess of boiler flues all over the place. I have actually seen that image and similar before. Boiler explosions are kind of terrifying. There's a lot of pressure in there and you don't want to be around if they happen to explode. The result is pretty interesting to look at though. IDK What to Put Here said, "Do you know of any 1/72nd scale A39 tortoise kits?" I don't know of one, though I've never really tried to find one either. I'm sure there's got to be at least one of them out there though. The tortoise isn't that obscure, is it? If anybody does know of one, please let us know in the comment section below. Australian Train Nut said, "Is YouTube your job? If not, what do you do?" It's not my job, but it would be very nice if it did pay enough to support me. At the moment, I don't really have what you would consider a proper job, but I do some voiceover work, mostly for a group making an educational app for kids. The income from that helps quite a bit. I also do temp work when I get it, which is usually HR or basic office stuff mostly. I also very rarely accept painting commissions. I'm too slow a painter to be doing that too often, and I don't want to turn that aspect of the hobby into a job. I think that would ruin it for me. I'm already putting in more than full-time hours with YouTube, streaming and voice work combined. I'm sure most people don't realise how much time this stuff takes to do. Maybe one day I will make enough money to live off, but I'm not holding my breath. Not that I'm really complaining. I mean, if I didn't enjoy it, it wouldn't be worth doing. But certainly if I had a real job, in heavy quotations, I would be much less productive. Would this be the right time to say, "Hey, go support me on Patreon? That'd be great." Ah, self-promotion. Jobo or Jobo68 said, "Have you seen the new Tanks Modern Age that's coming out? And are you going to do any videos of building or painting them if you get it?" I had no idea it was a thing, but I guess it does make sense that they would do something like this. It's another way to sell the Team Yankee tanks after all. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm not quite so interested in the more modern vehicles, but it seems like that might be a way to get some of the tanks in cheaper boxes with less vehicles maybe, or so I would assume. I'd actually be more inclined to check out the tanks in those smaller boxes. No promises of course, but I'll definitely give them some consideration. I feel like I haven't been doing a lot of 15mm stuff lately. Sir Bancroft said, "Hey Herbert, how have you been lately? Well, I should hope. I'd like to ask, how's the progress with the T-Rex going, and are you thinking of giving it a name?" I've been well enough, obviously a bit upset about the loss of a beloved pet, and I've been looking at new cars which is a bit tiresome, but otherwise life is pretty good. I've made no progress on the T-Rex since building it. At this point I'm still not sure if I want to give him guns and such or find a better T-Rex and give that guns. It's a low priority really. Also I haven't thought of a name for him. Maybe Percival? That's a tough name. Does anybody have any suggestions for a name? RGames12 said, "What is your favourite melee weapon? And should at everyone and at here be banned?" Do you mean as in real life? I don't generally use melee weapons in day-to-day life. I don't really know. I guess axes are pretty cool. I feel like I could swing a big axe pretty well, and I could be all like, "and my axe," all the time. Nobody would ever get sick of that. So an axe or maybe a nice sword, though if I'm honest, if I need to fight somebody I would rather do it at range. Also, I don't know if at everyone and at here should be disallowed. They do have a purpose, but I have been considering removing them. They really do seem to annoy people when they're used inappropriately, which is totally fair. Nobody likes excess notifications. I kind of expected people to be responsible with them, but maybe as the server grows that's a bit of a tall order, and I probably will remove them pretty soon, at least for the everyone role. Ratto said, "What is your favourite traffic sign, and why isn't at everyone banned?" I guess I did just answer about at everyone, and I've never really considered what my favourite traffic sign might be. Definitely not stop. Maybe one that tells me that I'm really close to my destination, or maybe one that says the speed limit is now higher than it was previously. Anything that makes my journey take less time. Fatslav6969 said, "Have you heard of Mio for water? It's like a flavouring thing. It's better than drinking soda and coffee. It's just water." I've never heard of it. Is it like powdered cordial or something? I've got my doubts that it's just water, but it does seem like a good idea compared to soda and coffee. Not that I drink coffee or sugary drinks anyway. I wonder if it's available in Australia. Probably not. On last fortnight's Ask a Herbert Erpaderp, MP Modelworks said, "Do you like parrots and other birds? If yes, what is your favourite type?" They add, "By the way, conures are the best." I do like birds, but I don't have a lot of experience with them. And I'm not sure that I would like a parrot as a pet. They seem to make too much noise. A friend of mine recently had a princess parrot for a while and it made way too much noise, which she wasn't entirely expecting. It's kind of like a child, they just never shut up. I think I would find it really disruptive to voiceovers. Also, they seem to need way more attention than I can give. Not only that, but I don't have appropriate space. It's not nice to cram birds into tiny little cages. Actually, I think I probably wouldn't mind some small, quieter birds. I understand finches aren't too noisy and they're pretty cute. I quite like the ones with the purple on their breast, whichever those are, but I don't think I'll be getting any birds anytime soon, so I'll just enjoy them from afar. RedGreen09 said, "Okay, what will be the name of the fish? And if you prime on sprue you'll not have glue points, and the kit you are putting together will be harder to put together, and the glue will take off the paint, and B-bit you won't see at all. Why paint him if not see it?" I still haven't thought of names for the fish, though I have named one of the suckerfish Legs because, well, they've got no legs. That's kind of amusing. I still haven't got names for the rest though. Does anybody have any suggestions? I do see what you mean, but it's not entirely true that there would be no glue points on a model painted on the sprue. You would just have to scrape the paint off where you want to apply the glue, which I would personally find a bit annoying. And there's always the chance of messing that up and having to do even more touch-ups after the model is together. I mean, if that's how people want to build their models, that's fine. It's just not for me. Max W said, "Darn, my dingo didn't get shown. Welp." I actually went back and looked in the miniatures channel after I saw that comment, and either I missed it again or it just wasn't there. I don't want to encourage people to post the same pictures over and over again because that would get kind of annoying, and like I said before, the squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease, but do feel free to post it again. There's so much stuff being posted in there now that I'm bound to miss something here and there. After all, I'm old and crap. But I do share most of the stuff you guys post. Speaking of, I hope you like awesome miniatures because this fortnight we have a whole ton of them. Not a literal ton, images on the internet weigh surprisingly little. There sure are a lot though. First, Ratto has shared his first 1/35th scale vehicle. It's a Zvezda BMP2. There are some gaps and he says the tracks were a pain, but it did only cost €18, and I think it looks pretty decent. Let us follow as Ratto paints this. First, he ran out of surface primer. Don't you just hate that? It never runs out just as you finish something, only halfway through. Here the base coats and highlighting and such have been added. And here it is with some weathering applied. Ratto commented that it doesn't look quite as good in the photo as it does IRL. I find that's often the case. It can be tricky to take really good pictures. Here's some pictures with a real camera, so we can actually see the weathering, which does look quite good. It's not over the top and it makes the vehicle look like it's seen some use. And here's Ratto's mother's first model, a Zvezda 15mm scale IS-2. I think it's really cool that you're sharing your hobby with your mum, and that she has enough interest to build a model. That's cool. Ratto also shared asking, "What is this?" The answer is a shooty box on tracks. And here is a couple of pictures of Ratto's club's gaming day. I hope good times were had by all. The big boy recently got on the 15mm train with this delightful Panther and Jagd Panther. These are the Battlefront models you can find in Flames of War and Tanks packaging. And here is the Panther all painted up. His name is Katschen117, and he looks great. The big boy said he wanted to put a little cat face on the hull front, but doesn't think his painting abilities were sufficient. If you practice enough, I'm pretty sure you'll get there. Nice work. And here's the big boy's ISU-152. This is another 15mm scale Battlefront model, and it's really nicely done. The big boy said to try and guess his name, and I'm not sure if anybody got it yet. Was it Zvero Boy? Or Beast Killer? Boy? Cool model. And here's an IS-2, and this is yet another Battlefront tank. This one is named I Am Gulag, which I find really entertaining. But does the phrase "go to Gulag" now mean get into this tank, or just go to the tank, which then presumably runs you over or shoots you? Nicely done. Max Strike Eagle posted this Panzer IV turret, or is it a Panzer III turret? It's a Panzer turret. He asked, too much? There's a lot of stuff added to this turret, but I think it looks cool, and it should look interesting when it's all painted up. And here's a B1 with its wing all torn up. This model is for Team Yankee. That damage looks really convincing. It looks like you've used foil and some wire. Awesome work. I can't wait to see this painted too. Sneaky Zaku said not enough improv armor, and shared a Zaku. And here it is with friends. They're just a bunch of pals hanging around doing Gundam things. These reminded Pax Britannica that he made this awesome looking choppy slicey fellow for a friend's Japanese Conflict 47 army. That's some very nice work. Also, here's a picture of some Jungle Boys, which I think are pretty good. He was asking if people thought that he should use the tufts on the bases or not. I answered something like why not both, because, well, why not? What do you guys think? More figures. Pax shared these, I believe as an example of tufts making bases look better, and I do agree, these Brits look very nicely done. Hugo the Panzer Builder shared this excellent wintry Stug diorama. It's a captured vehicle which explains the Soviet crew figures. This is some really nice work. And here's a Panzer III, which is also really nice looking. This looks like it's been fighting hard in the desert for quite a while. Both of them do really. Well, not so much the desert for the first one, but you know what I mean. Awesome work. Eastern Union shared this awesome IS-2. This looks like it's been beat up quite a bit and has been fighting hard for a long while. It's really great work. The traditional Soviet log is a nice touch too. Eastern Union also shared this old Hella Bruget 693. I'm sure I slaughtered that name. This is a 1/72nd scale model and it looks pretty cool. It's an interesting looking plane. Here are some of Eastern Union's older kits. A Soviet plane of some kind? I'm not a planesman so I can't quite identify it, but it looks great and there's some excellent engine detail too. I know what this is, it's a Sturmovic, ready to sturm all of the Vics. And here's a jet of some kind. Again, I can't identify what kind it is because I'm a bad, but it looks very nicely done. This plane is quite dirty looking. I guess it's been landing on improvised dirt runways or something for quite some time. There's this, I believe it's called a Shiaka? Probably said that wrong. I've always thought these were quite strange looking aircraft. Strange in a good way. And finally, this MiG-21, or at least that's what I think it is. It looks like it's had a hard life full of fighting and other jet things, I guess. Very nice. Some dude shared the, I'm guessing, final version of his foil-wrapped plane. It has shark teeth so that you know it fights alongside the flying tigers. Some dude suggests this would work better with a larger scale plane, and says that you need to use really thin aluminium tape with large pieces of tape and foil. Also, forget weathering with powders. It doesn't work well enough. Also, the decals are a bit fragile. It looks decent enough though, and it's an interesting idea that's been cool to follow along. Thank you for sharing. Here's something a little bit different, also shared by some dude. A Lego car. It looks like a Speedy Boy. Not technically really a miniature, but I like it anyway. Lego is pretty awesome. Jobo68 shared this beaten up Kursk Panther. It looks to me like it's been beaten up, given a new turret, and then been beaten up again. Very nice work, though I would like to see it from more angles. And here's some more stuff from Jobo's Flames of War collection, including this Jeep and pair of M20 Scout cars. This pair of Shermans, which are really quite nice. And this plane, the type of which I can't identify off the top of my head because I'm a bad. Here are some 6-pounders, I believe, and their command squad. Very shooty boys. Here are some Achilles, also very nice, like the rest of Jobo's stuff. Somebody mentioned that the rust isn't realistic, and that is true enough. Their commanding officer would probably be very angry about that, but it does look cool and that's really what matters. Here are some Panzer IVs that look like they've been slogging through a whole bunch of mud. Very nice. And here's something different. Some tiny ships. The water on these is done very nicely, as of course are the ships. Awesome work. Fog of War shared these awesome looking British tracked rapiers, which are air defense options for his Team Yankee Australians. He says this was a test with his new dry brushing brush, which replaces the 30-year-old one which sadly lost its last bristle. Rip old dry brush. All hail new dry brush. It does work good. These look pretty great. I've been fortunate enough to actually encounter the apparently only tracked rapier in Australia at Tank Ride in Tamborine. It's an interesting looking vehicle inside and out. Also, here are some M113s, T50s, that are nearly finished. The base-coated one was included for comparison. Harry Robinson 1969 shared some tiny little swords. They're made from aluminium wire which can be shaped with a hammer without the need for a forge. Harry uses them for eating olives. I think these are really cool. Llama finished this Airfix P51D and asks for some constructive criticism. I think it's a pretty decent paint job, though it seems like it's gone on a little bit thick, mostly around the nose area. You could probably put a little bit of rust and dark colouring around the exhausts too. That would look nice. And maybe you could use some masking where the different colours meet each other to ensure nice straight lines. Otherwise it's not too bad at all. Very clean. I'm assuming you were going for a fresh, clean look. Fatslav 6969 shared this diorama which I think also functions as a gaming table. It's pretty cool, though it's not 100% finished yet. As someone suggested, superglue and baking soda would probably be really good for texturing that road, though you may need to find a bulk container of superglue or something. Here's a few more shots including some German shooty-mans hiding by a bush, and following this tiger down the road. The foliage here is pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure the white stuff here is glue that is still wet. Fatslav asked if we think they should extend their gaming table, and I do think the board you have here is a bit small. There was some discussion about modular table bits, and I look forward to seeing some more diorama-y stuff. Also, I rather like the rows of pink flowers. Speaking of more dioramas, here's two newer ones from Fatslav, and I think they look pretty rad. The beach one is a gift for Fatslav's grandmother, which is sweet. Marble has shared a handful of his models, all of which are 1/72nd scale from a variety of manufacturers. Marble says they're not the very best, but he's happy with them, and that's what matters. I'm sure if you keep going you'll get better and better, and you can look back at these and see your progress. I've always enjoyed doing that. Here's Marbles' finished King Cobra Sherman, the first in Bastogne. Someone commented that this looks very frosty, and it does. Very cold and snowy. It's quite nice work. Shermanaholic shared this Sherman named Bushmaster. I will pretend to be surprised that somebody with that name is sharing Shermans. It looks really good. Top Bunk shared this, I'm assuming now complete, platoon of Sturs. Not Stugs, Sturs. These look really cool, and I like how different each vehicle looks, both in the sense that they've all got different stowage and bits of shirts missing, but that there's also variation in their paint and weathering too. And here's a couple of close-up pictures of the Commander figures. Very nice work. Also, here are the first of his Necrons. I like the red, it makes them look more unique than the average Necron. These have extra bits from the bits box, including the bases. You can probably tell that this guy is standing on top of a roof from a Lee, or maybe it's a Grant. It works really nicely as a piece of ship hull or factory floor or something like that, and it isn't immediately obvious what it is. I had to look twice before I realised what it was. Very cool. Byzantine Falcon shared this BT-42 mini derp, which is pre-weathering and looks pretty great. I mean, what more could you want in a tank? A derp gun and the ability to do sick jumps? You couldn't want anything more. There's also this T-34 with weathering in progress. Both of these are finished tanks and they're very nice. Also, here's a picture of Byzantine Falcon's current force. It's a Finnish continuation war force and it's very nice. And you've got a lot more painted than I do for my forces. Gentleman shared this bright blue Tiger P. This is a 3D printed model. The blue, while a very nice colour, does make it a bit hard to see the detailing. It is interesting though. Gentleman also did a regular Tiger 1. These models look to be fairly decent. Eventually I'll get my own 3D printer too. 3D printing technology is probably going to be more and more relevant to our hobby. As much as I like building a plastic kit, the convenience of printing stuff as you need it definitely appeals to me. Smoes shared this incomplete Airfix 1/48 scale Bolt & Paul Defiant Mark I. It's clearly not finished, but it's going on the shelf for a bit while Smoes works on a diorama, which I hope we're going to get to see. So far the plane is looking very wingy. Be sure to keep us updated when you start working on it again. McGobbo shared some more Consortium figures. This one is called Steve Adams. He looks as though he's been a bit influenced by Judge Dredd. And this lady is an alien Illusion called Kure. I like the green accents on her suit. Flying Scanion shared 16 short angry dudes with poking sticks, or as you might know them, Oathmark dwarves. They look really stabby, and also very nicely painted. The Chieftain shared his work in progress Irish Guards, or at least that's what I assume the IG stood for. I think this is the Warlord plastic model, but I can't quite tell. This is looking pretty great so far. It even seems to be carrying a spare tyre for somebody. That's very kind. Sir Bancroft has shared some pictures of his first ever painted miniatures. It's a section of mid to late World War II British infantry. They look to be the plastic bolt action figures, and they're very nicely done, especially for your first miniatures. Keep up the good work. I think if you want a bit of constructive criticism, a little bit of wash would be nice and help bring out some of the details, and it looks like your paint was a little bit thick and could do with a tiny bit of thinning, though it's not too bad really. Also, here's two moody black and white versions of some of the pictures, which I thought were pretty cool. In these pictures, the bases are finished and painted. Awesome work. I can't wait to see what you paint next. Crimson 1149 shared these 15mm scale Desert Rats tanks. First, a Crusader. It looks great and it fits nicely in the palm of the hand. Here's an M3 Grant. I'm assuming these are all Battlefront plastic kits, though I could be wrong. They look really good. Here's a Mark 8 Valentine, which is also really well done. This really makes me want to get my hands on all three of these tanks. They look great and you've done a really nice job painting them. Jihad Teppo shared his work in progress Tiger 2. This is looking really nice so far and I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses. I quite like the shade of brown you've used. And that's it for this fortnight. This has turned out to be quite a long video. As always, I want to thank you all for your questions and modelling images. Keep up the excellent work, and if you have any questions you would like me to answer on next fortnight's Ask a Herbert Erpaderp, be sure to put them in the comments section below or on Discord. And if you haven't already, why not sub here on YouTube, follow me on social media, or watch me live stream on Twitch. And if you really like what I do, please consider supporting over on Patreon or perhaps by purchasing a shirt or mug from my merch store. Links to all of those things are in the description below, and as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, give your dog a pat from me, and thanks for watching. Farewell.